Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves not in a castle, not on a battlefield, but in a garden. Imagine the cool damp earth beneath your fingers, the earthy scent of turned soil filling your nostrils. You're crouching low, pulling back tangled green leaves to reveal something pale, knobbly, and surprisingly promising. This isn't your average carrot, this is skirret, the sugar root of the Middle Ages. A taste of history, literally. Now, before you get too excited about time traveling for a snack, remember hygiene wasn't exactly a priority back then, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You kneel in that medieval garden, the air thick with the sounds of buzzing bees and distant chatter. You carefully tug at the cluster of roots, the skirret, feeling the cool earth give way. These little white tubers, sometimes called sugar roots, were the medieval candy. Imagine that, before refined sugar, this humble root was a source of sweetness craved by everyone from peasants to royalty. You wipe the dirt off one of the roots, you're taking a risk, I know. You nibble. It's sweet, yes, but also earthy. A little like parsnip, a little like carrot, but with a unique sugary kick. You can see why it was so popular. Records show that skirret was cultivated extensively across Europe, from monasteries to humble farm plots. Charlemagne himself, that legendary Holy Roman Emperor, even ordered its cultivation in his imperial gardens. He loved his skirret, it appears. But how it made its way to him is a mystery. Some say it originated from China, making its way west along the Silk Road. Others insist it's native to Europe. Historians still argue whether skirret arrived as a cultivated crop or a wild plant tamed for human consumption. Now, picture yourself as a medieval cook. You're tasked with preparing a feast for the lord of the manor. The pressure is on. You decide to roast the skirret with a little honey and some herbs, hoping to impress. You toss them in the sizzling fat in a cast iron pan, the smell beginning to fill your kitchen. The air starts to warm and take on a sweet, earthy aroma. You can almost taste the end result. You might consider adding a little ginger for a touch of spice. Recipes from the Middle Ages often included skirret in stews, tarts, and even sweet wine. And if your party guests get sick, well, they might actually thank you for it. You see, in addition to its culinary uses, skirret was also believed to possess medicinal properties. Medieval physicians prescribed it for a variety of ailments, from coughs and colds to digestive problems. One popular remedy involved boiling skirret in milk and honey to soothe a sore throat. I bet you wish you had some now, huh? The idea of food as medicine was commonplace during this time, so skirret offered a delightful way to heal and treat your body. Now, imagine you're a medieval peasant, with no lord to impress and no elaborate kitchen. Your life is hard, your options limited. But you have your small plot of land, and on it, you cultivate your own skirret. It provides a crucial source of sweetness and sustenance. You might simply boil it in water, adding a touch of salt and maybe a wild herb if you're lucky. For you, it's a valuable addition to your meager diet. But it's not without its challenges. Skirret can be a bit tricky to grow. It prefers moist, well-drained soil, but it's also susceptible to various pests and diseases. And it can be a bit of a pain to harvest, with its tangled roots that can easily break. But you, my friend, are resilient. You are the people that survived the Middle Ages. You also might have learned some clever tricks for preserving skirret. Perhaps you dry the roots in the sun or pickle them in vinegar to make them last through the winter. People also stored it in jars filled with honey or spiced wine, transforming the root into a sweet treat they could enjoy during the cold nights. This would make it delicious, and would help preserve it. But as we move forward in time, something curious happens. Skirret begins to fade from popularity. The arrival of sugar cane from the New World gradually diminishes its appeal. Refined sugar becomes more widely available and more affordable, pushing skirret into the shadows. Sugar cane was easier to grow and process. Skirret, in comparison, seemed a bit fiddly and old-fashioned. You may even begin to wonder if people began to see it as food for the lower class. Why eat roots when you can eat pure, crystallized sugar? By the 17th and 18th centuries, skirret is largely forgotten in many parts of Europe. It becomes a curiosity, a historical footnote, rather than a staple food. The great houses moved away from it, and with them, the peasant farmers that had grown it for centuries. You can see how easily trends begin and die. Today, you might find it growing in old gardens or in the wild, a reminder of a sweet past. Interestingly, skirret continues to be cultivated in some parts of Asia, particularly in China and Japan. There, it's valued for its medicinal properties and its unique flavor. It's a testament to the plant's enduring appeal. You might even find it in local Asian markets. It's another reminder of how different cultures can preserve a plant for thousands of years. You may wonder if there's a chance for skirret to make a comeback in Europe. Maybe, with the growing interest in local, sustainable foods, it could find a new audience. Chefs are always looking for unique ingredients to experiment with, and skirret certainly fits the bill. Perhaps one day you'll see it on the menu of a trendy restaurant. It also would add a nostalgic element to a meal for those that knew about it, making it more desirable. You can imagine a dish featuring roasted skirret with rosemary and garlic, or a skirret and apple tart with a hint of cinnamon. It could be a culinary adventure, bringing a forgotten flavor back to the table. Imagine pairing it with a savory meat dish, or even adding it to a soup for sweetness. The sky's the limit. But for now, as you return to the present, remember the skirret. It's a reminder that even the humblest of plants can hold a sweet history. A history of resourcefulness, adaptation, and the enduring human desire for a little bit of sweetness in a world that wasn't always so sweet. Okay, friend, settle in. Let's talk about ramps. Not the skateboarding kind, though wouldn't that be a delicious crossover? No, we're diving into the world of Allium tricoccum, the wild leek that packs a garlicky punch. You know, the one that makes foodies lose their minds every spring. You're probably thinking, ramps? What's the big deal? And honestly, I get it. They're just onions. But hear me out. There's something undeniably alluring about these little green blades, a certain ephemeral quality that makes them feel special. They're only around for a fleeting few weeks, popping up in the dappled sunlight of eastern North American forests like tiny green flags declaring that winter is officially over. Imagine this, you trudge through the still damp earth, the scent of decaying leaves clinging to your boots. The air is crisp, carrying the promise of warmer days. You follow a faint, almost imperceptible aroma, garlic, but somehow, wilder. You crest a small hill and, bam! A carpet of vibrant green stretches before you, a sea of ramp leaves shimmering in the filtered light. Now, you might be tempted to just start yanking them up by the handful. Hold on there, partner. We're not barbarians. Ramps are notoriously slow to reproduce, and overharvesting is a real problem. You only want to take a few leaves from each plant, leaving the bulb intact so it can keep doing its thing. Think of it like pruning a rose bush, a little snip here and there encourages growth. Besides, you really only need the leaves for a big flavor payoff. It's like the difference between yelling a sentence and whispering it. Whisper is always more intimate, and that's what we are going for here. You carefully select a few healthy leaves, feeling their smooth, slightly waxy texture between your fingers. As you break them, the pungent aroma intensifies, filling the air with a heady mix of garlic, onion, and something distinctly earthy. It's a smell that promises culinary adventure. Before you even get back to your kitchen, you're probably already dreaming of all the delicious things you can make. Ramp pesto, ramp butter, ramp-infused olive oil, the possibilities are endless. Of course, you could always just sauté them with a little butter and salt, letting their natural flavor shine. It's like nature's own shallots. Maybe you can even add it to your ramen. It can add just enough flavor. And trust me, once you taste them, you'll understand the hype. That initial garlicky bite gives way to a subtle sweetness, followed by a lingering, savory finish. It's a complex flavor that adds depth and dimension to any dish. It's why chefs go crazy for them. Ramps have been a food source for centuries, especially for Native Americans. They were, and are, a vital part of many tribes' diets and medicinal practices. They ate them raw, cooked, and even used them to treat colds and other ailments. Ramps have also been used as a springtime tonic, believed to cleanse the blood and revitalize the body after a long winter. Think of it like a green smoothie, but with significantly more oomph. In fact, certain Appalachian communities still hold ramp festivals every spring, celebrating the arrival of this pungent plant with music, food, and, presumably, a whole lot of garlicky breath. But don't think their reputation is limited to Appalachia. The Ojibwe people, for example, used ramps not only as food but also as a treatment for worms and colds. That's what I call a multi-purpose plant. And this brings me to something a little more, shall we say, out there. Some folklore suggests that ramps have protective qualities, warding off evil spirits and bringing good luck. In some rural communities, people would hang bunches of ramps over their doorways to keep bad vibes away. It's like garlic, but with a hipster upgrade. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were truly widespread or just localized traditions, but it's a fun tidbit to consider as you're chopping up your ramps. Were they using it like a charm? Historically, ramps were also important to settlers. They used it to remedy vitamin deficiencies after long winters of little food. The irony is, even the indigenous people helped teach the settlers of the benefits and what the plant was. Some might say it's kind of nice how they helped each other out. Speaking of history, did you know that Chicago actually gets its name from the wild leek? The Miami and Illinois tribes called the area near the Chicago River, Chicaquah, which translates to wild onion or skunk place. The name referred to the strong odor of ramps that grew abundantly along the riverbanks. So, the next time you're in Chicago, take a deep breath and remember that you're inhaling the scent of history, and garlic. It's just too bad that the scent isn't much of wild leeks anymore since the rampant industrialization has just about wiped them out. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, sustainability. Ramps are facing increasing pressure due to overharvesting, habitat loss, and climate change. It's important to be mindful of where you're getting your ramps and how they were harvested. If you're buying them from a store or farmer's market, ask about their sourcing practices. And if you're foraging them yourself, remember to harvest responsibly and only take what you need. One thing that can make it difficult for the plant to reproduce is that they take between 5 and 7 years to reach sexual maturity. They are not exactly popping them out, if you catch my drift. Think of it this way, you wouldn't drain an entire lake just to catch a few fish, would you? Same principle applies to ramps. Overharvesting is like eating all the candy in the world, you feel really bad when you have that stomach ache. It's important to leave the bulbs in the ground. Because otherwise, how will you get more wild leeks? In fact, many of the ramps you see being sold have been poached from national parks. That's a big no-no and you risk being heavily fined. And before you ask, yes, there's a difference between ramps and scallions. Scallions are cultivated onions, while ramps are wild. Ramps have broader leaves and a more intense flavor. It's like comparing a house cat to a mountain lion. One is cuddly, the other, well, you probably don't want to cuddle it. Now, I know what you're thinking, okay, I get it. Ramps are cool and I should be responsible. But how do I actually use them? Fear not, my friend, because I'm about to give you a few simple tips and tricks. First things first, cleaning. Ramps tend to be a bit gritty, so you'll want to rinse them thoroughly under cold water. Gently rub the leaves to remove any dirt or debris. You can also soak them in a bowl of water for a few minutes to loosen any stubborn particles. Next, it's time to prep them. You can use the entire plant, from the leaves to the bulb. Just trim off the roots and any tough outer layers of the bulb. The leaves can be chopped or sliced, depending on your preference. I personally like to chiffonade them. That's just a fancy way of saying, roll them up and slice them thinly. It makes you feel fancy, you know. Now, for the cooking part. Ramps are incredibly versatile and can be used in a variety of dishes. They're great sautéed with butter and garlic, added to omelets or frittatas, or used as a topping for pizza or pasta. You can even grill them for a smoky, charred flavor. You can even put it in your omelet. You can also use them to make ramp pesto, which is a delicious alternative to traditional basil pesto. Simply combine ramp leaves, garlic, Parmesan cheese, pine nuts, and olive oil in a food processor and blend until smooth. It's amazing on pasta, sandwiches, or even just spread on crackers. Don't forget about ramp butter. Simply combine softened butter with chopped ramps, salt, and pepper. Roll it into a log, wrap it in plastic wrap, and chill until firm. Slice off rounds as needed and use it to top steak, chicken, or vegetables. And if you're feeling adventurous, you can even pickle them. Pickled ramps are a tangy, garlicky treat that can be enjoyed on their own or added to salads and sandwiches. Some even dare to add it to their cocktails. Okay, enough about cooking. Let's get back to the weird stuff. Did you know that ramps are considered a delicacy in some parts of the world? In certain European countries, they're even more prized than truffles. I'm not kidding. You can find them on the menus of Michelin-starred restaurants, served alongside foie gras and caviar. But hey, if the Michelin chefs can eat it, why can't we? And speaking of fancy food, there's a growing trend of using ramps in cocktails. Bartenders are infusing them in vodka, gin, and even tequila, creating unique and savory drinks. It's like a Bloody Mary with a serious attitude problem. But perhaps the strangest ramp-related fact is that they're sometimes used in perfume. Yes, you read that right. Perfumers are extracting the essence of ramps and using it to create unique and intriguing fragrances. I can't say I've ever smelled a ramp perfume, but I imagine it would be memorable. Maybe it smells like when you open the fridge and someone put garlic in there without a cover. Historians still argue whether ramps truly have any medicinal properties, but there's no denying that they're a delicious and nutritious food. They're packed with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Plus, they're a great source of fiber. So, go ahead and indulge in some ramp goodness. Your body will thank you. So, there you have it. A deep dive into the wonderful world of ramps. From their garlicky aroma to their culinary versatility to their quirky history, these little green blades have a lot to offer. Just remember to harvest responsibly, cook creatively, and embrace the weirdness. And for Pete's sake, brush your teeth afterward. Alright friend, I think I will leave it here. Happy ramp hunting. Alright, come closer, closer. That's it. Let your eyes adjust to the, well, let's call it, ambience we've got going on here. Soft lighting, gentle music, just the right setting to talk about something wildly exciting. Prepare yourself because today, my friend, you are becoming intimately acquainted with Alexander's, the Mediterranean marvel for all seasons. You trudge along a sun-drenched path, the air thick with the scent of wild herbs and something a little different. Something a little pungent. That's Alexander's. Picture it, glossy, serrated leaves reaching for the sky, topped with umbels of tiny, greenish-yellow flowers. Not exactly a showstopper in the beauty pageant of the plant world, I'll grant you that. But appearances can be deceiving, can't they? Like that one guy in high school who looked like he spent his weekends indoors playing Dungeons and Dragons, who then turned out to be a nationally ranked chess player. Alexander's is the chess master of the plant kingdom. You run your fingers along the leaves. They're smooth, almost waxy. Give them a little sniff. You get that intriguing aroma, a blend of celery, parsley, and something a little spicy. Not, like, wasabi spicy, but more of a, well, a personality spicy. This isn't your average garden weed, my friend. This is history you're smelling. You see, Alexander's, Smyrnium Olycatrum, to impress your friends at botanical garden cocktail parties, was a culinary powerhouse in the medieval period. Long before celery, parsley, and all their leafy green brethren were readily available, Alexander's was the go-to green. Every part of the plant, from the roots to the seeds, was fair game. It was the ultimate zero-waste kitchen garden staple, way before being eco-conscious became trendy. You could boil the roots like parsnips, blanch the stems like asparagus, use the leaves in salads, and spice your dishes with the seeds. It's like the Swiss Army knife of edible plants. Speaking of Swiss Army knives, did you know that Charlemagne, the first Holy Roman Emperor, was such a huge fan of gardening that he included Alexander's on a list of plants that should be grown in every imperial garden? I bet you didn't expect to hear Charlemagne and Alexander's mentioned in the same breath today, did you? He was essentially the medieval Martha Stewart, only with considerably more military might and a slightly less charming disposition, probably. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's all well and good, but why aren't we all chomping down on Alexander's every day? What happened? Well, the rise of celery is largely to blame. Celery is milder, easier to cultivate, and frankly, a little less intense than Alexander's. It's like the difference between listening to elevator music and a punk rock concert. Both have their place, but one is a lot less likely to offend your neighbors. You crouch down, examining the plant more closely. See those tiny black seeds starting to form? Those were once highly prized for their medicinal properties. Medieval apothecaries used them to treat everything from digestive problems to, well, let's just say female complaints. You know, the kind of things that were politely whispered about behind closed doors back then. Historians still argue whether the use of Alexander's for such ailments was based on genuine medicinal properties or simply wishful thinking fueled by folklore and superstition. Let's not dwell on that. You stand up, brushing off your knees. The sun is starting to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the landscape. You can almost imagine yourself transported back in time, to a medieval kitchen filled with the aroma of roasting meat, simmering herbs, and the distinct, slightly pungent scent of Alexander's. The cook, a stout woman with flour dusting her apron, is chopping Alexander's stems with a practiced hand, preparing a hearty stew to feed the Lord and his household. She doesn't even look up as you pass by, too busy wrestling with the challenges of feeding dozens of hungry mouths. This wasn't MasterChef, medieval edition. But before you get too carried away with your medieval fantasy, let's bring things back to the present. You reach out and carefully harvest a few Alexander's seeds, popping them into a small container. Don't go eating them right away. You plan on using them to try your own hand at medieval cooking, adding a touch of historical flair to your modern dishes. Or at least, that's the plan. You may just end up throwing them in a drawer and forgetting about them. It's okay. The thing is, Alexander's is experiencing something of a comeback. Foragers and adventurous chefs are rediscovering its unique flavor and versatility. It's like finding a forgotten treasure in your grandmother's attic, a quirky, unexpected surprise that adds a little spice to your life. And here's a quirky tidbit for you: in some parts of Britain, Alexander's is known as hellroot. Not exactly the most appealing name, is it? But don't let that scare you off. The origins of the name are a bit murky. Some say it refers to the plant's robust growth and ability to thrive in even the most inhospitable conditions. Others believe it's a reference to its slightly bitter taste. Now, you walk a bit further, noticing that Alexander's seems to grow particularly well near the coast. This makes perfect sense, considering its Mediterranean origins. It thrives in sunny, well-drained locations, with a preference for slightly salty air. Kind of like me on vacation, really. I need the salt, the sun, the sea breeze, otherwise, I just become a grumpy, pale blob. You think about the plant's journey from the Mediterranean to northern Europe, carried along by Roman soldiers, medieval monks, and countless generations of cooks and gardeners. It's a testament to its resilience and its enduring appeal. You get the impression that this unassuming plant has seen a lot. More than you. More than your cat. maybe even more than your grandma. You close your eyes, inhaling the scent of the Alexanders one last time. It's a reminder that history isn't just something you read about in textbooks. It's all around you, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. You think that the world is full of plants with the same potential. If you looked at them differently. If you were brave enough to taste them. Historians still argue whether the widespread cultivation of Alexanders contributed to the decline of Roman foraging practices, or whether it simply provided a more reliable and consistent source of greens for a growing population. Personally, I think it was a bit of both. Progress is like that, it giveth, and it taketh away. As you stroll back towards home, the Alexander seeds nestled safely in your pocket, you can't help but feel a sense of connection to the past. You're probably imagining yourself, 1,000 years from now, the descendant of a time traveler, telling stories about this strange plant to your own wide-eyed audience. You are a modern-day forager with ancient roots. You are a champion of forgotten flavors. You are, well, you're probably just hungry. But hey, at least you have a newfound appreciation for a plant that's been feeding people for centuries. And perhaps, just perhaps, you'll even be brave enough to try cooking with it. Who knows? You might just discover your new favorite ingredient. Or, you might just end up with a slightly bitter, slightly pungent stew. But either way, you'll have a story to tell. And that, my friend, is what it's all about. You also remember one last interesting factoid. Alexander's was sometimes used as a strewing herb in medieval homes, meaning it was scattered on the floor to release its scent when walked upon. It was a natural air freshener, a fragrant alternative to the unpleasant odors of daily life. Take that, Febreze. That's the spirit. We've reached the end. Time to sleep. Okay, settle in, friend. Let's get cozy and chat about a plant. A plant that, frankly, doesn't get nearly the recognition it deserves. I'm talking about good King Henry. You trudge through the garden, maybe after a long day of, well, whatever it is you do. Doesn't matter. You're here now. The sun is probably doing that nice, golden hour thing, casting long shadows, making everything look a little more romantic than it actually is. And you're thinking, ugh, spinach. Again. It bolted last week anyway. You reach into your gardening arsenal, hoping for a vibrant green alternative, you know, something, regal. Something Henry-like. Enter good King Henry, Cinepodium bonus Henricus. No, he wasn't actually a king. Although, you have to admit, bonus Henricus has a certain ring to it. You reach for a tender leaf, feeling its slightly rough texture between your fingers. It's not quite spinach, but it's leafy, it's green, and it's ready to be your dinner. You pinch off a handful, the leaves feeling cool and refreshing. As you crush them slightly, a faint earthy aroma rises, promising a taste of the wild. Good King Henry, also known as poor man's spinach, Lincolnshire spinach, or markery, has been a staple for centuries, offering a reliable source of greens when other vegetables are being difficult divas. And let's face it, a lot of vegetables are divas. You carry your harvest inside, the setting sun painting the kitchen in warm hues. You imagine medieval peasants, their faces weathered and tanned, doing the same thing, relying on this unassuming plant for sustenance. They probably didn't have Instagram to document their garden haul, though. A shame, really. You rinse the leaves under cool water, watching the dirt swirl away, revealing their vibrant green color. They look deceptively simple, but good King Henry is packed with nutrients. Vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, iron, the whole shebang. It's practically a multivitamin in leaf form. You feel a little bit healthier just looking at it. Now, what to do with these verdant treasures? You could sauté them with garlic and olive oil, maybe add a squeeze of lemon for brightness. Or you could toss them into a salad with some crumbled feta and toasted pine nuts. The possibilities are endless, really. You chop the leaves coarsely, the sound rhythmic and soothing, like a tiny green orchestra just for you. While you're prepping, let's rewind a bit. Historians still argue whether the plant originated in Europe or Asia. But there is some consensus that the Romans helped spread good King Henry across Europe, valuing it for its edible leaves and seeds. The Romans, those guys were pretty savvy when it came to food. They also loved lead pipes, though, so maybe not everything they did was golden. The plant was so widespread that in some regions, people even thought its seeds had magical properties. Imagine, sprinkling good King Henry seeds around your house to ward off evil spirits. Beats sage burning, right? Although, probably smells a little less, botanical boutique. As you start cooking, the kitchen fills with the savory aroma of sautéing garlic. You toss in the good King Henry leaves, watching them wilt and soften, their vibrant green fading to a deeper, more subdued hue. They cook down quickly, much like spinach, so you don't want to overcook them. Unless you like that mushy spinach thing. No judgment. Mostly. The taste is interesting. It's definitely spinach adjacent, but with a slightly earthier, more robust flavor. Some people find it a bit bitter, but you actually enjoy that slight edge. It adds character, you think. It tells a story. A story of resilience, of adaptability, of being a humble, reliable source of food for centuries. And a story of possibly magical seed protection against evil spirits' capabilities. You plate your dinner, the good King Henry glistening with olive oil and a sprinkle of sea salt. You take a bite, savoring the flavor, feeling a sense of connection to all those who have eaten this plant before you. Medieval peasants, Roman soldiers, maybe even a druid or two. You are part of a long and storied culinary lineage. But good King Henry isn't just for eating. The plant also has medicinal properties. Some traditional herbalists use it as a poultice to soothe minor burns and skin irritations. Imagine, your dinner also being your first aid kit. Talk about multitasking. Although, you probably shouldn't slather your sautéed good King Henry on a sunburn. Just a thought. And here's another fun fact, the young shoots of good King Henry can be eaten like asparagus. Asparagus. Who knew? So, you get spinach, asparagus, and potentially evil spirit-warding seeds all in one plant. What a bargain. As you finish your meal, a gentle breeze wafts through the open window, carrying the scent of the garden. The moon is rising, casting a silvery glow over everything. You feel a sense of peace, of contentment. And a slight smugness that you managed to avoid the dreaded bolted spinach. Now, growing good King Henry is relatively easy, which is part of its appeal. It's a perennial, meaning it comes back year after year. So, you plant it once, and it keeps on giving. Like a really, really good friend who always brings snacks. It prefers well-drained soil and partial shade, but it's pretty adaptable. It can handle a bit of neglect, which is good for those of us who are, shall we say, less than attentive gardeners. You find yourself thinking, I need more of this in my life. And you're probably right. More good King Henry, more resilience, more humble yet reliable sources of nourishment. More plants with magical seed properties. But remember, while good King Henry is generally safe to eat, it does contain oxalic acid, which can interfere with calcium absorption. So, if you're prone to kidney stones or have other health concerns, it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor before consuming it in large quantities. You know, the usual disclaimer. You begin to clean up, the clatter of dishes a comforting rhythm in the quiet kitchen. You glance out at your garden, already planning your next good King Henry harvest. You imagine the plant thriving, providing you with a steady supply of greens throughout the season. You wonder, briefly, if you should try sprinkling the seeds around your house, just in case. It couldn't hurt, right? The night deepens, the stars twinkling in the inky sky. You feel a sense of gratitude for this humble plant, for its resilience, its versatility, and its surprisingly rich history. And you realize that sometimes, the best things in life are the ones that are simple, reliable, and a little bit unexpected. Like a spinach substitute with a royal name and a side hustle as a potential evil spirit deterrent. As you settle into bed, feeling full and content, you remember a little-known fact about good King Henry: it was once used as a dye. The roots can be used to create a yellow dye. So, not only can you eat it, heal with it, and possibly ward off evil with it, but you can also dye your clothes with it. Good King Henry is practically a one-plant cottage industry. You close your eyes, a smile playing on your lips. You drift off to sleep, dreaming of medieval peasants, Roman soldiers, and fields of vibrant green good King Henry waving in the breeze. And maybe, just maybe, a few tiny, sparkling seeds warding off any lingering evil spirits. Okay, friend, that's it for our good King Henry adventure. Hopefully, you found that mildly engaging, and not so dull that it put you to sleep instantly. Now if you'll excuse me, I think I might go sprinkle some good King Henry seeds around my own apartment, just to be on the safe side. You never know what's lurking in the shadows. Good night. Alright, settle in, friend. Get comfy. Maybe grab a warm mug of something. Today, we're not talking about the fluffy, sugary clouds you roast over a campfire. Nope. We're going way, way back. We're talking about Mallows. Yes, Mallows. As in, the humble ancestor of that marshmallow. You trudge through a sun-drenched meadow, the air thick with the scent of wildflowers. Butterflies flutter lazily around you, their wings catching the light. You can practically feel the warmth seeping into your skin. And there, growing amongst the grasses and clover, is what we're looking for, a cluster of mallow plants. They're unassuming, really. Nothing like the processed confection we associate with their name. Their leaves are soft, velvety to the touch, a gentle green that soothes the eye. You run your fingers over them, feeling their delicate texture. It's a world away from the sticky, artificial sweetness of a modern marshmallow. These mallows are part of the Malva genus, a group of flowering plants found all over the world. They're hardy little things, able to thrive in a variety of climates, from temperate regions to subtropical zones. You can find them popping up in meadows, along roadsides, even in your own backyard if you're lucky. Think of them as the introverted cousin of the showy hibiscus. They share a family tree, but mallows prefer a quiet, understated existence. Now, you might be wondering, how did this become that? And it's a valid question. The connection between these unassuming plants and the sugary treats we know and love is actually quite fascinating. For centuries, people have used the mallow plant, specifically the marshmallow species, Althea officinalis *, for its medicinal properties. The plant's roots, in particular, are rich in a gooey substance called mucilage. This mucilage has soothing and anti-inflammatory effects, making it a popular remedy for coughs, sore throats, and digestive issues. Imagine that, reaching for a plant when you have a sore throat, not some cherry-flavored syrup. Wild concept, huh? You carefully dig up a small section of a mallow root, noticing the almost slimy texture of the inner flesh. It doesn't exactly scream dessert, does it? The ancient Egyptians were among the first to discover the medicinal benefits of the marshmallow. They would boil the root, mix it with honey, and use it to treat a variety of ailments. It's even said that marshmallow was offered to the gods, although probably not as a s'more. Imagine offering Ra a giant, gelatinous puff. He'd probably strike you down with a sunbeam. The Romans also embraced the mallow plant, using it for similar medicinal purposes. They believed it could soothe irritated skin and heal wounds. Pliny the Elder, a Roman naturalist, even wrote about its healing properties in his encyclopedic work, Natural History. So, you know, it had the Pliny the Elder stamp of approval. That's gotta count for something. During the Middle Ages, mallow root continued to be a popular ingredient in herbal remedies. Monks cultivated the plant in their gardens, using it to make cough syrups and lozenges. These early marshmallows were a far cry from the fluffy confections we know today, more akin to a medicinal pastille. Think of them as the OG cough drop. Historians still argue whether the medieval use of mallow was purely medicinal or if it was also enjoyed as a treat. It's likely a bit of both. The sweetness of the honey combined with the soothing properties of the mallow root would have made for a palatable and beneficial confection. It was probably the closest thing they had to a guilt-free indulgence. Well, guilt-free from a health perspective anyway. The church might still have had something to say about it. You pull out your pocket knife and carefully shave off a small piece of the mallow root. It has a subtle, earthy aroma, slightly sweet and a little bit, well, vegetal. It's definitely not the artificial vanilla scent you're used to. Over time, the process of making marshmallows evolved. In the 19th century, French confectioners began experimenting with new ways to create the treat. They whipped the mallow root extract with sugar and egg whites, creating a lighter, fluffier confection. These early marshmallows were still made with real mallow root, but they were becoming increasingly decadent. These French pâtes de guimauve, as they were called, were considered a luxury item, enjoyed by the wealthy and elite. They were often flavored with rosewater or orange blossom, adding to their sophisticated appeal. They were basically the macarons of their day. Now, here's a fun fact: before the invention of modern machinery, making marshmallows was a labor-intensive process. Confectioners had to pour the mixture into molds and let it set by hand. This could take hours, even days. Talk about a commitment to your craft. Then came the game changer, the invention of the extrusion process. This allowed manufacturers to mass-produce marshmallows, making them more affordable and accessible to the general public. And, let's be honest, significantly less arm-cramping for the confectioners. But here's where things get interesting. As demand for marshmallows increased, manufacturers began looking for cheaper and more efficient ways to produce them. They started replacing the real mallow root with gelatin, a protein derived from animal collagen. Gelatin provided the same texture and stability as mallow root, but at a fraction of the cost. And just like that, the mallow plant was relegated to the sidelines. Its role in the marshmallows story was gradually forgotten. Now, most commercially produced marshmallows don't contain a trace of the plant that gave them their name. It's kind of sad, isn't it? Like replacing your family heirloom with a cheap imitation from a big box store. You take a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill your lungs. The sun is beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the meadow. The air is cooling, and you can hear the crickets chirping in the distance. While the mallow plant may no longer be a key ingredient in marshmallows, it still holds a special place in herbal medicine. You can find mallow-based cough syrups and lozenges in some health food stores. Some people even grow mallow in their gardens, using the leaves and flowers in teas and salads. Mallow tea, in particular, is said to have a calming and soothing effect. It can help ease anxiety and promote relaxation. So, if you're feeling stressed out, maybe skip the sugary snacks and brew yourself a cup of mallow tea instead. It's a healthier and more historically accurate way to enjoy the plant's benefits. Plus, you can tell people you're drinking a beverage favored by ancient Egyptians. That's gotta earn you some cool points. And here's a quirky tidbit for you: in some cultures, mallow leaves are used as a natural dye. They can produce a range of colors, from pale green to deep brown, depending on the preparation method. So, if you're looking for a sustainable and eco-friendly way to color your fabrics, mallow leaves might just be the answer. You gather a handful of mallow leaves, their velvety texture still surprisingly soothing. They're a reminder of the plant's rich history and its enduring connection to the world around us. Historians still argue whether the modern marshmallow industry owes a debt of gratitude to the mallow plant. After all, it was the plant's unique properties that inspired the creation of the confection in the first place. But perhaps it's time we gave mallows their due. They deserve to be recognized for their contributions to both medicine and culinary history. Even if they're not exactly a campfire staple. As you prepare to leave the meadow, you take one last look at the mallow plants. They stand tall and proud, their unassuming beauty a testament to their resilience. They're a reminder that sometimes the simplest things in life are the most valuable. And that even the most humble of origins can lead to something truly extraordinary. Even if that extraordinary thing is a fluffy, sugary cloud of gelatinous goodness. don't forget, they were first. You tossed the mallow root sliver you tasted, the grassy, subtle sweetness really wasn't for you. But as you head home, you can't help but smile. You've learned something new today. You've connected with nature. And you've gained a newfound appreciation for the humble mallow plant. Maybe you'll even try growing some in your own garden. Just don't expect to harvest enough to make a batch of marshmallows. That's a whole other project. Alright, settle in, friend. Get comfy. Maybe grab a cup of chamomile. Today, we're diving into the surprisingly vibrant world of Orach. Orach, you ask? Yeah, I know, it sounds like a particularly grumpy character from a fantasy novel. But trust me, it's far more interesting, and way more delicious than anything a dragon's hoard could offer. You're probably used to seeing spinach, right? That dependable green leafy staple. Well, Orach is kind of like spinach's cooler, more adventurous cousin. The one who always brings a funky dish to the potluck and somehow manages to pull off wearing socks with sandals. It's got that familiar spinach-y flavor, but with a slightly milder, earthier note. Imagine yourself, trudging through your garden, the sun beating down, your spinach looking a little, wilted. Sad. Defeated. It's a common gardening tragedy, isn't it? Spinach can be so dramatic. But then, you spot it. A vibrant splash of color, standing tall and proud. That, my friend, could very well be Orach. It comes in shades of green, yes, but also red, purple, and even yellow. Think of the Instagram possibilities. Think of the salads. You might be wondering, where did this color explosion come from? Well, Orach, Atriplex hortensis if you want to get all scientific about it, has been around for a while. We're talking ancient history long. It originated in Eurasia, likely somewhere in the area of modern-day Russia. You might not have heard of it as much as spinach, but it's got a history as rich as, say, the Roman Empire. Speaking of the Roman Empire, did you know that they practically lived off of garum, a fermented fish sauce? Apparently, it was the condiment of the time. You put that on your Orach, maybe it'd be a little bit much. I'm just saying. Now, Orach started showing up in gardens all over Europe during the Middle Ages. It was a popular leafy green, often used as a substitute for spinach, particularly during the hotter months when spinach tended to bolt, that is, produce flowers and become bitter. Think of it as the spinach understudy, always ready to step into the spotlight. It was also a valued medicinal plant. People used it to treat everything from scurvy to digestive issues. It was basically the ancient equivalent of kale. Except, you know, people actually liked it. It's funny how some foods go in and out of fashion, isn't it? Orach was all the rage for centuries, but then spinach came along with its Popeye-fueled marketing campaign, and suddenly Orach was relegated to the culinary sidelines. Kinda sad when you think about it, but hey, trends are fickle things. But here's the thing about Orach, it's a survivor. It's incredibly hardy and adaptable. It can tolerate poor soil, drought, and even some frost. This makes it an excellent choice for gardeners in challenging climates. You know, those of us who don't live in perfectly manicured, Martha Stewart-approved landscapes. For example, even if you only have a balcony, it could be really great there. It doesn't need a lot of space. This is where you imagine yourself, battling the elements. The sun is relentless, the wind is howling, and your other plants are cowering in fear. But the Orach? It's just thriving, soaking up the sunshine, and laughing in the face of adversity. It's basically the Chuck Norris of leafy greens. You're probably thinking, okay, it's hardy. But what does it actually taste like? Well, as I mentioned before, the flavor is similar to spinach, but milder and slightly earthy. Some people describe it as having a hint of saltiness, which is quite nice. You can eat it raw in salads, or cooked like spinach. It wilts down beautifully in stir-fries, soups, and stews. You can even use it to make Orach gratin, or Orach quiche. The possibilities are endless. And because it comes in so many colors, you can add a real visual pop to your dishes. Imagine a salad with green spinach, red orach, and yellow bell peppers. It's like a fiesta in your mouth. And your eyes. Now, let's dive into a few of those quirky tidbits I promised. Did you know that orach is sometimes called mountain spinach? It can grow wild in mountainous regions, clinging to rocky slopes and generally being awesome. And did you know that some cultures believe that orach has magical properties? Apparently, it can ward off evil spirits and bring good luck. I'm not entirely sure about that one, but hey, it can't hurt to plant a few seeds just in case. You might think I'm joking, but actually, people used to think a lot of plants had magical powers. Take mandrake root. It was believed to shriek when pulled from the ground, and that anyone who heard the shriek would die. Of course, that wasn't true, but, imagine how interesting it was to be a gardener back then. So, how do you grow this magical, delicious, and visually stunning plant? It's actually pretty easy. You can start orach from seed, either indoors or directly in the garden. Sow the seeds in well-drained soil in a sunny location. Keep the soil moist until the seedlings emerge. Once the plants are established, they're relatively low maintenance. Just water them regularly and give them a little fertilizer every now and then. Orach is also relatively pest and disease resistant, which is always a bonus. You might encounter a few aphids or slugs, but they're usually easy to control. And if you let a few plants go to seed, they'll happily reseed themselves, ensuring a continuous supply of orach for years to come. Basically, once you have orach forever. Or at least for a very long time. Historians still argue whether orach played a significant role in feeding the masses during times of famine. Some believe that its hardiness and adaptability made it a crucial source of nutrition, while others argue that it was never widely cultivated enough to make a real difference. I mean, I guess we'll never know for sure. I do know I'd rather have orach than nothing. So, you've planted your orach, it's growing beautifully, and you're ready to harvest. The best time to harvest orach is when the leaves are young and tender. You can pick them individually as needed, or you can cut the entire plant down to the ground. It will usually regrow, giving you multiple harvests throughout the growing season. When it comes to cooking with orach, the possibilities are endless. You can use it in any recipe that calls for spinach. Try adding it to your smoothies for a nutritional boost. Sauté it with garlic and olive oil for a simple and delicious side dish. Use it as a pizza topping, or add it to your omelets and frittatas. You can even make orach pesto. Just substitute the basil with orach, and you're good to go. Here's a joke: what do you call a fake noodle? An impasta. I had to get at least one in. I know you were all waiting for it. You didn't think I could do a whole garden thing without a bad pun, did you? But one of the things that is really cool is that orach can be used as a natural dye. The leaves contain pigments that can be used to create vibrant colors on fabric and yarn. This makes orach a sustainable and eco-friendly alternative to synthetic dyes. So, not only can you eat it, but you can also wear it. Sort of. There's this whole movement now to make clothes out of food waste, like orange peels or coffee grounds. People have even made leather out of mushrooms. I'm not sure I want a jacket made out of mushrooms, personally. It just sounds damp. But hey, maybe I'll change my mind one day. But getting back to the subject at hand, orach is a really great thing to try out. Maybe you're an adventurous gardener, or maybe you're just trying to add more greens to your diet. Either way, orach is a wonderful option. It's easy to grow, delicious to eat, and visually stunning. It's also a great conversation starter. Just imagine the look on your friends' faces when you tell them you're growing orach. They'll be like, "What's orach?" And you can be all like, "Oh, it's only the coolest plant ever." Plus, it's a bit of a rebellious act, isn't it? Choosing orach over spinach. It's like saying, "I'm not going to follow the crowd. I'm going to embrace the unconventional." I'm going to plant a rainbow in my garden. And who knows? Maybe Orach will make a comeback. Maybe it will once again become a staple food, gracing the tables of homes around the world. Maybe you, my friend, will be the one to lead the charge. The Orach Revolution. Now that's a thought. Alright, time to get some rest. Until next time, happy gardening. Right, settle in, settle in. Let's talk sea kale. Yes, sea kale. The vegetable that sounds like it should be guarded by mermaids and taste of brine, but is actually, well, we'll get to the taste. Think of this as a botanical ASMR session. Just let my voice wash over you, as we delve into the slightly strange, undeniably interesting world of Cram Marittima. You trudge along a pebbly beach. The wind whips at your hair, carrying the tang of salt and the mournful cries of gulls overhead. The gray sky presses down, making the already muted colors of the landscape even more subdued. And then, you see it. A clump of bluish-green foliage, emerging defiantly from the shingle. This, my friend, is sea kale. Not exactly a culinary revelation at first glance, is it? It looks a bit unhappy. Like it's regretting all its life choices that led it to being rooted in a pile of cold, wet rocks. You reach out and gently touch one of the thick, waxy leaves. It feels surprisingly resilient, built to withstand the harsh conditions of its coastal home. This hardiness is what makes sea kale so intriguing. It's a survivor, thriving where other plants would simply give up and wither away. It's the botanical equivalent of that grumpy old fisherman who's seen it all and isn't impressed by anything. You might be thinking, okay, it's tough. So what? Well, this toughness translates to a pretty unique flavor profile. But we'll get there. Patience, young Padawan. Historically, sea kale has been a part of the coastal diet for centuries. The Romans, those culinary innovators, except for that whole vomitarium thing, don't look that up before dinner, are believed to have cultivated it. Imagine, togas flapping in the breeze as they harvest sea kale along the shores of Britannia. Historians still argue whether they considered it a delicacy or just something edible during a particularly lean winter. I'm putting my money on the latter. Romans weren't exactly known for their subtlety. And speaking of lean times, during both world wars, sea kale provided a valuable source of vitamins and minerals for people living along the British coast. It was a free and readily available food source when other options were scarce. A real wartime hero of the vegetable world. Although, I doubt it got any medals. Maybe a knighthood, at best. Sir Sea Kale, defender of the realm. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Now, here's a quirky tidbit. In some coastal communities, people used to believe that sea kale had magical properties. They believed it could ward off evil spirits and protect against storms. Imagine that, hanging a bunch of sea kale over your door like some kind of fragrant, slightly salty dreamcatcher. It probably wouldn't work, but hey, it's worth a shot, right? Especially if you live in a haunted lighthouse. But let's move on from folklore and get to the good stuff, the taste. Now, I'm not going to lie, sea kale isn't going to knock your socks off with its sweetness. It's not strawberries. Think of it more like a cross between cabbage, asparagus, and the faint memory of the ocean. It has a slightly bitter, earthy flavor with a hint of saltiness. You know, the kind of taste that makes you think, huh? That's interesting. The key is to harvest the young shoots in the spring, when they're at their most tender. Older leaves can be a bit tough and bitter, like that uncle who tells the same joke every Christmas. Preparation is key. You can steam it, boil it, sauté it, or even grill it. Just don't overcook it, or it will turn into a mushy, unappetizing mess. Think of it as a delicate balance, a culinary tightrope walk. One of the best ways to enjoy sea kale is simply steamed with a little butter and lemon juice. It's a simple preparation that allows the natural flavor to shine through. You can also add it to salads, soups, or even stir-fries. Experiment. Be adventurous. Just don't blame me if it doesn't turn out quite like you expected. From a nutritional standpoint, sea kale is a powerhouse. It's packed with vitamins C and K, as well as various minerals and antioxidants. It's basically the leafy green equivalent of a superhero. Vitamin C for immunity, vitamin K for blood clotting, and antioxidants for fighting off those pesky free radicals. All this from a plant that looks like it's perpetually contemplating its existence on a windswept beach. Go figure. Growing sea kale isn't exactly a walk in the park. It requires a very specific set of conditions: well-drained soil, plenty of sunlight, and a healthy dose of salty sea air. Basically, it wants to live by the beach, just like all the cool kids. If you don't live near the coast, you can still try growing it in a container, but you'll need to provide it with regular doses of salt water. And I mean actual salt water, not just tap water with a pinch of table salt. Don't be lazy. Get the real deal. This is why it is so infrequently found in mainstream shops, so when you do find it, you know someone has gone to a lot of effort. There's a growing movement of chefs and food enthusiasts who are rediscovering the value of forgotten or underappreciated ingredients like sea kale. They're seeking out these unique and sustainable foods, and incorporating them into their menus. It's a culinary revolution, one slightly salty leaf at a time. Chefs are elevating ingredients that were once considered peasant food into gourmet delights. It's a bit ironic, really. You know, the funny thing is, sea kale isn't actually a true kale. It belongs to the cram genus, which is part of the Brassicaceae family, the same family that includes kale, cabbage, and broccoli. So, it's like that cousin who always gets invited to the family reunion, but doesn't quite fit in. Now, here's a thought to ponder: could sea kale be the answer to sustainable food production in coastal areas? It's a hardy plant that thrives in marginal environments, and it doesn't require a lot of resources to grow. Perhaps it could be a valuable crop for coastal communities facing the challenges of climate change and food security. It's an interesting question, and one that deserves further investigation. The future of sea kale is uncertain. Will it become a mainstream vegetable, gracing the shelves of every supermarket? Or will it remain a niche ingredient, cherished by a select few? Only time will tell. But one thing is for sure: sea kale is a survivor. It has weathered storms, endured lean times, and remained true to its salty, slightly bitter self. And that, in my book, is something to admire. I personally think it could be the next big thing. Move over, avocado toast, here comes sea kale toast. Okay, maybe not. But a girl can dream, can't she? I think there's also something deeply satisfying about foraging for your own food. It connects you to the land, and it reminds you that food doesn't just magically appear on the supermarket shelves. It requires effort, knowledge, and a respect for the natural world. And finding sea kale, clinging to a windswept beach, is like discovering a hidden treasure. Of course, foraging responsibly is crucial. You need to know what you're doing, and you need to be aware of the potential risks. Don't just go out and start ripping up every plant you see. That's not cool. Only harvest what you need, and leave enough for the plant to regenerate. It's like borrowing a cup of sugar from your neighbor: you need to return the favor eventually. Or at least bake them some sea kale muffins. A particularly odd use of sea kale, which never really took off, involved using the seeds as a source of oil for lamps in the 18th and 19th centuries. It was a bright idea, pun intended, but ultimately, other sources of oil proved to be more efficient and cost-effective. Still, it's a fascinating glimpse into the past, when people were constantly searching for new and innovative ways to light up the darkness. I'm not going to suggest this is for everyone, but I'm kind of curious what sea kale ice cream might taste like. Sweet, salty, slightly vegetal, intriguing, no. Sea kale is a reminder that there's still so much to discover in the natural world. So, the next time you find yourself on a coastal walk, keep an eye out for this unique and underappreciated vegetable. You might just be surprised by what you find. And who knows, maybe you'll even become a sea kale convert. Or maybe you'll just think it tastes like slightly salty grass. Either way, you'll have experienced something new, something a little bit different, and something undeniably coastal. And in this day and age, that's got to count for something, right? Well, that's it for our little ASMR adventure into the world of Cram Marittima. I hope you found it enlightening, relaxing, at least mildly interesting. If not, well, there's always cat videos. But seriously, give sea kale a try sometime. You might just surprise yourself. Good night. Okay, settle in, make yourself comfy. Dim the lights, maybe light a candle that smells vaguely of dirt. Perfect. Tonight, we're going on a little adventure. A root-bound, earth-toned, slightly bizarre adventure. We're diving headfirst into the world of salsify. Picture this, you trudge through a forgotten corner of your garden, the soil clinging stubbornly to your boots. A crisp autumn breeze whispers secrets through the skeletal branches of the trees overhead. You're searching. Searching for something different. Something that isn't just another potato or carrot. You're on the hunt for salsify. And there it is. A tall, unassuming plant with grass-like leaves and maybe a faded purple flower head, depending on the variety. It's not the most glamorous vegetable, let's be honest. It looks ordinary. But don't let appearances fool you. Beneath the surface lies a culinary enigma. A whisper of the sea hidden in the earth. You grasp the base of the plant firmly and gently ease it from the soil. The long, slender root, pale brown and vaguely parsnipish, emerges with a satisfying pop. That's your prize. That's salsify. You hold it up, brushing off the clinging soil, and think, okay, what now? Well, first, you admire it. Appreciate its humble beauty. Okay, maybe beauty is a stretch, but appreciate its potential. Because this, my friend, is no ordinary root vegetable. This is the oyster plant. Or, at least, that's what people say it tastes like. We'll get to that in a minute. But before we do, a little history lesson, just for kicks. Salsify, Tragopagon porifolius to be precise, has been hanging around for a good long while. We're talking centuries. The Romans, those culinary pioneers, were quite fond of it. They cultivated it, cooked it, probably bragged about how much better it was than the vegetables their barbarian neighbors were eating. Historians still argue whether salsify was even cultivated during the Roman times or just wild harvested. Either way, they ate it. And presumably enjoyed it. Fast forward a few centuries, and salsify pops up again in the gardens of medieval Europe. It was considered a valuable crop, a reliable source of sustenance, especially during the lean winter months. It was so important to medieval populations that it was even believed to contain medicinal properties to boost the immune system and to help in the digestion process. It's that kind of vegetable, practical, reliable, and slightly forgettable. Like that one friend you always forget to invite to parties, but secretly rely on to help you move furniture. But here's a quirky little fact for you. Did you know that salsify has a close relative that's considered a weed in many parts of North America? It's called goat's beard or meadow salsify, Tragopagon pratensis *, and it looks remarkably similar to its cultivated cousin. The difference? One you laboriously dig out of your garden, cursing its tenacity, the other you carefully nurture and prepare for a fancy dinner party. The irony is almost poetic. Now, let's talk about that oyster flavor. This is where things get interesting. The taste of salsify is subtle, delicate, earthy. It's not going to slap you in the face with the briny tang of the ocean. Think of it as more of a hint of oyster. A whisper of the sea. A suggestion of seafood lingering in the background. Some people say it tastes more like artichoke hearts, while others swear they detect a faint vanilla note. It's all very subjective. And maybe a little bit of wishful thinking. You bring your salsify root inside, wash it carefully, and peel off the tough outer skin. This can be a bit of a chore, I won't lie. The skin is sticky, and the root tends to discolor quickly once exposed to air. So, a little tip, have a bowl of water with a squeeze of lemon juice handy. This will help prevent oxidation and keep your salsify looking its best. As you peel, you might notice a milky white sap oozing from the cut surfaces. This is perfectly normal. It's just the plant's natural defense mechanism. Don't worry, it won't hurt you. Unless you're allergic to daisies, which, as salsify is a member of the daisy family, is important to take into consideration. Now, what to do with this strange, oysterish root? The possibilities are endless. You can roast it with olive oil and herbs, turning it into a crispy, caramelized delight. You can boil it, mash it, and serve it with butter and cream, creating a comforting and elegant side dish. You can add it to soups and stews, where it will lend its subtle flavor and creamy texture to the broth. One popular method is to slice the salsify thinly and sauté it with garlic and butter. The garlic complements the salsify's delicate flavor perfectly, while the butter adds a touch of richness. A sprinkle of fresh parsley or chives at the end adds a pop of color and freshness. And of course, you can deep fry it. Because everything tastes better deep fried, right? Salsify fries are a surprisingly delicious treat. Crispy on the outside, tender on the inside, with that subtle, elusive oyster-like flavor. Serve them with a dollop of tartar sauce for extra authenticity. You know, to really drive home the oyster thing. You carefully slice a piece of the cooked salsify and tentatively pop it into your mouth. You chew slowly, savoring the flavor. What do you taste? Earthiness? Sweetness? A hint of something? It's hard to say. It's definitely not an oyster. But it's interesting. Intriguing. Definitely not your average root vegetable. You might be thinking, okay, it's not really oyster flavored. So, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that salsify is something different. Something unexpected. Something that challenges your palate and makes you think about where your food comes from. It's a conversation starter, a culinary curiosity, a reminder that there's more to the world of vegetables than potatoes and carrots. And also, it is good. And here's another fun historical tidbit. During the Victorian era, salsify was often used as a substitute for oysters, particularly by those who couldn't afford the real thing. Imagine, darling, I've prepared a delightful oyster stew, only to discover it's actually made with salsify. The horror. Okay, maybe not horror. But definitely a slight disappointment. It also makes you wonder if this is when the comparison originated. It would make sense. Now, some people are convinced that the best way to experience the true oyster-like flavor of salsify is to grow your own. They argue that the flavor intensifies when the root is freshly harvested and cooked immediately. And that, they say, is what delivers the full oceanic experience. I don't know about that. But growing your own vegetables is always a good idea. It connects you to the earth, it provides you with fresh, healthy food, and it gives you something to brag about at dinner parties. Oh, these salsify fries? They're from my garden. But here's the thing about salsify. It's not the easiest vegetable to grow. It requires well-drained soil, plenty of sunlight, and a fair amount of patience. It also has a tendency to bolt, go to seed, in hot weather, which can ruin the flavor of the root. So, if you're thinking about growing salsify, do your research. Choose the right variety for your climate, and be prepared to put in a little extra effort. Is it worth it? That's up to you to decide. But if you're looking for a unique culinary experience, if you're tired of the same old vegetables, if you're willing to embrace a little bit of weirdness, then salsify might just be your new favorite root. And speaking of weirdness, here's a slightly fringe tidbit for you. Some believe that the milky sap of the salsify plant has magical properties. They claim that it can be used to ward off evil spirits, attract good luck, and even enhance psychic abilities. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying that some people believe it. And who am I to judge? Maybe that slightly oyster-esque flavor opens up portals to another realm. Historians still argue whether Victorians truly believed in the magical properties of vegetables or if it was just a way to make them more appealing. It's one of those delightfully unanswerable questions that keeps historians employed. Regardless, the thought of Victorian ladies gathering salsify under the moonlight, hoping to glimpse the future, is rather charming, isn't it? Back to our culinary adventure. Now, don't be discouraged if your first attempt at cooking salsify isn't a resounding success. It can take a little practice to get it right. The key is to experiment with different cooking methods and flavor combinations until you find what works best for you. And don't be afraid to get creative. Salsify can be used in a wide variety of dishes, from soups and stews to salads and side dishes. You can even use it to make desserts. Salsify ice cream, anyone? Okay, maybe not. But who knows? Maybe it's delicious. Maybe you'll be the one to revolutionize the world of salsify desserts. But here's the most important thing to remember: salsify is not about perfection. It's about exploration. It's about embracing the unexpected. It's about finding joy in the simple act of cooking and eating. And, yes, it's about maybe, just maybe, tasting a hint of the ocean in a humble root vegetable. So, the next time you're at the farmer's market or browsing the produce section of your local grocery store, keep an eye out for salsify. Give it a try. You might be surprised at what you discover. And if you don't taste the oyster, well, at least you'll have a good story to tell. And, you'll have eaten your vegetables. Which is always a good thing. Now, wasn't that grounding? I hope you feel enlightened about this wonderful root vegetable. Alright, settle in. Let's talk scorzonera. I know, the name sounds like a particularly nasty strain of flu, doesn't it? Scorzonera. But trust me, it's much more pleasant than that. Think of it as the goth cousin of the parsnip, the mysterious, black-clad member of the root vegetable family with a surprising number of talents. You find yourself wandering through a farmer's market, the air thick with the scent of ripe tomatoes and freshly tilled earth. Sunlight glints off the colorful displays, a kaleidoscope of nature's bounty. And then, you spot them. Lying in a humble heap, almost overlooked amidst the vibrant peppers and plump pumpkins, are long, slender roots covered in a dark, almost charcoal-like skin. Scorzonera. You reach out, cautiously touching one. It feels surprisingly smooth, cool to the touch. The skin is rough but not unpleasant, like well-worn leather. It's a vegetable that demands your attention, not with flashy colors, but with an aura of understated intrigue. You pick one up, turning it over in your hand. It's heavier than you expect, solid and substantial. This isn't some delicate little radish, this is a root that's seen some things, been through some dirt, and has emerged all the more interesting for it. You might think, looking at this unassuming root, that it's a relatively recent discovery, a trendy new addition to the culinary scene. But you'd be wrong. Scorzonera has a surprisingly long history, stretching back to at least the 16th century. Legend has it that it was introduced to Europe by the Moors, who, in their travels across continents, brought with them not only architectural innovations and mathematical prowess, but also a keen eye for interesting plants. In fact, its name might give you a clue about its origins. Scorzonera is thought to derive from the Old Spanish word escorzon, which itself comes from escurzo, meaning viper. Now, why would a root vegetable be named after a snake? Well, that's where the medicinal properties come in. Back in the day, it was believed that scorzonera was an effective antidote to snake venom. Which, makes sense. If you're going to name something after a venomous creature, it should probably be something that can counteract its bite. It's like naming your dog vacuum cleaner, because it's good at hoovering up dropped food. You might be wondering if this claim holds any water. Well, while modern science hasn't exactly proven scorzonera to be a foolproof cure for snake bites, please don't try this at home. It does contain compounds that have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. So, while it might not be the magic bullet for venomous encounters, it certainly packs a healthy punch. You decide to buy a few of these curious roots. Back in your kitchen, you're faced with the challenge of preparing them. This isn't as simple as peeling a carrot or washing a potato. The black skin of Scorzonera contains a milky latex that can stain your hands and anything it comes into contact with. It's like the vegetable version of trying to change a printer cartridge. The key is to wear gloves, latex, ironically, and to peel the Scorzonera under running water. This helps to wash away the latex and prevent it from staining. Once peeled, you'll be greeted with a creamy white flesh, ready to be transformed into something delicious. You might be tempted to simply boil it, like a potato. But Scorzonera deserves better than that. Its flavor is delicate, slightly sweet, with a hint of nuttiness. It's often compared to asparagus or artichoke hearts, but with an earthier, more grounded quality. It's a flavor that rewards patience and careful preparation. One popular way to enjoy Scorzonera is to sauté it in butter with a little garlic and thyme. The gentle heat brings out its sweetness, and the butter adds a rich, luxurious texture. You can also roast it in the oven with other root vegetables, like parsnips, carrots, and sweet potatoes. The high heat caramelizes the natural sugars, creating a symphony of flavors. For a more refined dish, you could try making a Scorzonera puree. Simmer the peeled roots in milk or cream until tender, then blend until smooth. Season with salt, pepper, and a pinch of nutmeg. The result is a velvety smooth, subtly flavored side dish that's perfect for accompanying roasted meats or fish. You find yourself experimenting with different recipes, each one revealing a new facet of this versatile root. You discover that it pairs well with creamy cheeses, earthy mushrooms, and bright, citrusy flavors. You even try adding it to soups and stews, where it lends a subtle depth and complexity. It's the kind of ingredient that makes you feel like a proper culinary explorer, braving new frontiers of taste. But beyond its culinary uses, Scorzonera has also been prized for its medicinal properties throughout history. As we mentioned before, it was once believed to be an antidote to snake venom. But its uses didn't stop there. It was also used to treat a variety of other ailments, from digestive problems to skin conditions. In fact, during times of famine, Scorzonera was a vital source of nutrition. It's rich in vitamins, minerals, and fiber, making it a valuable addition to any diet. And because it can be stored for long periods of time, it was a reliable source of sustenance when other foods were scarce. It's the root vegetable equivalent of having a well-stocked pantry, ready to face any culinary emergency. Historians still argue whether Marie Antoinette truly said, "Let them eat cake," but there's little doubt that, had she been presented with a pile of Scorzonera during a period of food shortage, she might have been rather more pleased. Well, perhaps. We can't know for sure what went on in the palaces of Versailles, but it's fun to imagine Marie Antoinette, not surrounded by opulent cakes, but huddled over a bowl of roasted Scorzonera, declaring it magnifique. The popularity of Scorzonera has ebbed and flowed throughout history. It was particularly popular in the 17th and 18th centuries, when it was grown in the gardens of royalty and nobility. It was considered a delicacy, a treat reserved for the privileged few. It's like the vegetable version of a private club, accessible only to those in the know. But in more recent times, Scorzonera has fallen somewhat out of favor. Perhaps it's because of its unusual appearance, or the extra effort required to prepare it. Or maybe it's simply been overshadowed by more mainstream vegetables. But whatever the reason, it's a shame that this delicious and nutritious root has been relegated to the sidelines. However, there are signs that Scorzonera is making a comeback. Chefs are rediscovering its unique flavor and versatility, and home cooks are beginning to appreciate its health benefits. Farmers markets are starting to feature it more prominently, and seed companies are offering a wider variety of Scorzonera cultivars. It's like the vegetable equivalent of a cult classic film, slowly but surely gaining a devoted following. You yourself have now joined that devoted following. You find yourself seeking out Scorzonera whenever you can, experimenting with new recipes, and sharing your discoveries with friends and family. You've become a scorzonera evangelist, spreading the word about this underappreciated root vegetable. You even start growing your own. It takes a bit of patience. Scorzonera is a slow-growing crop, but the reward is well worth the effort. There's nothing quite like harvesting your own scorzonera, pulling the long, black roots from the earth, and feeling the satisfaction of bringing something truly unique to your table. Just be sure to label them carefully, or your neighbors might think you're growing some kind of exotic black licorice. As you sit down to a meal featuring scorzonera, you can't help but feel a sense of connection to the past. You're eating something that has been enjoyed by people for centuries, something that has played a role in history, and something that continues to offer both culinary and medicinal benefits. It's a reminder that even the most humble of foods can have a rich and fascinating story to tell. And that sometimes, the most interesting things are found in the most unexpected places. And perhaps, as you savor the earthy sweetness of your scorzonera dish, you might even find yourself feeling a little bit healthier, a little bit more connected to the natural world, and a little bit more grateful for the simple pleasures of life. After all, who knew that a black, snake-named root could bring so much joy? Alright, settle in, settle in. Let's talk about something weird. Something you might have walked right past at the farmer's market, wrinkling your nose, wondering what in the Sam Hill that thing is. I'm talking about croissants. Yeah, croissants. Say it with me, Skirret. Sounds kind of French, doesn't it? Like a fancy croissant's weird cousin. You approach the stall. There, nestled amongst the carrots and radishes, looking like tiny, segmented worms that decided to take up gardening. Or maybe fossilized larvae from a sci-fi movie. The vendor smiles, a little too enthusiastically, and offers you a sample. Do you dare? I mean, you're here now. You hesitantly reach out and take one. It's firm. Oddly smooth. You pop it in your mouth. Crunch. That's the first thing you notice. An undeniable, satisfying crunch, like the perfect water chestnut. Then comes the flavor. Mild, slightly sweet. A little nutty. Almost, artichoke-y. Wait a minute. That's because these little weirdos are also known as Chinese artichokes. Despite the name, they aren't actually artichokes in the traditional sense. They're Stachys affinis, a member of the mint family. Mint, who would have thought? You're beginning to appreciate it, aren't you? This unassuming little tuber might just be your new favorite snack. Okay, maybe not favorite, but definitely most conversation starting. Imagine serving these at your next dinner party. The looks on your guests' faces will be priceless. Think of the Instagram potential. Hashtag croissants, hashtag weird vegetables, hashtag foodie adventure. You know, the funny thing is, croissants have been around for ages. They originated in China, as the name kinda gives away. They've been cultivated there for centuries. But how did they get their fancy French name? Well, that's where the story gets a little more interesting. In the late 19th century, a French botanist named Monsieur Palliou introduced croissants to France. He grew them in the village of Croissants, near Paris. And so, voila, the croissant was christened. You can almost picture him, can't you? A beret-clad botanist, meticulously tending to his noble little treasures, dreaming of culinary fame and fortune. Well, fame, maybe. Fortune. Debatable. He probably didn't anticipate some sleepy YouTube host talking about them a century later. He likely didn't imagine that they would also become a Victorian-era delicacy. Imagine ladies in bustles and gentlemen in top hats, delicately nibbling on croissants at fancy garden parties. Back then, they were often served pickled or glazed. Today, you're more likely to find them stir-fried or roasted. Progress, I guess. You have to admit, there's something inherently silly about the idea of Victorian socialites fussing over what looks like little, edible grubs. Oh, darling, are these croissants bio? By the way, did you know that in some parts of Asia, croissants are considered lucky? They're often eaten during Chinese New Year celebrations to bring wealth and prosperity. Maybe you should stock up. Can't hurt, right? Think of them as tiny, edible lottery tickets. Although, let's be honest, you're probably more likely to win the actual lottery than see croissants become the next kale. You might be wondering, okay, they're crunchy and a little weird, but are they actually good for you? Well, yeah, actually. Croissants are a good source of fiber, potassium, and iron. They also contain a decent amount of vitamin C. So, you can feel good about yourself while you're munching on these bizarre little tubers. You're not just eating something strange, you're eating something healthy and strange. Speaking of healthy, let's delve into something a little less appetizing. During World War II, in some areas, resources were incredibly scarce. People had to get creative with their food sources. Now, sources claim that in some cases, croissants were used as a substitute for potatoes, or even as a source of livestock feed. I know, going from fancy Victorian snack to wartime survival food is a bit of a come down. But hey, desperate times call for desperate measures. Think about it, your great-grandparents might have survived thanks to these little guys. Maybe you should treat them with a little more respect. Now, back to the fun stuff. How do you actually cook with croissants? Well, you have a few options. You can stir-fry them with some garlic and ginger for a simple and flavorful side dish. You can roast them with other root vegetables for a more substantial meal. You can even pickle them for a tangy and crunchy snack. The possibilities are endless. Well, maybe not endless, but there are definitely more than 3. One thing to keep in mind is that croissants don't need a lot of cooking. They're best when they still have a bit of crunch to them. Overcooking them can make them mushy and, well, less appealing. Nobody wants mushy worms on their plate. Nobody wants to eat mushy worms ever. You also don't really need to peel them. Just give them a good scrub to remove any dirt. They're surprisingly low maintenance, once you get over the initial, "what is that thing?" reaction. Historians still argue whether croissants deserve more recognition in Western cuisine. Some argue that their unique texture and mild flavor make them a versatile ingredient that could be used in a variety of dishes. Others believe that their unusual appearance is a barrier to widespread acceptance. I mean, let's be real, they do look a little alien. Imagine trying to sell these to a picky eater. Honey, try these delicious space potatoes. Speaking of unusual appearances, there's a fringe theory that the segmented shape of croissants is no accident. Some believe that it's a result of some ancient form of selective breeding, designed to mimic the appearance of certain medicinal worms. The idea being that people would be more likely to eat them if they looked like they had healing properties. Sounds a little far-fetched, doesn't it? It's almost certainly nonsense, but hey, a little bit of food conspiracy never hurt anyone. Except maybe the worms. But maybe you don't want to eat them. Maybe you just want to grow them. Well, you can do that too. Croissants are relatively easy to grow. They prefer well-drained soil and a sunny location. Plant them in the spring or fall, and you should have a decent harvest by the end of the season. Just be warned, they can be a little invasive. So, you might want to plant them in a contained area. Unless you want your entire garden to be overrun with tiny, edible worms. Think of the possibilities. A croissantopia. Okay, I'll stop. You could even give them as gifts. Imagine handing a friend a bag of freshly harvested croissants. Their reaction would be priceless. Thanks? What am I supposed to do with these? You can then regale them with tales of French botanists, Victorian socialites, and possible wartime survival. You'll be the most interesting person at the party. Guaranteed. You know, sometimes I think we get so caught up in the latest food trends that we forget about the weird and wonderful ingredients that have been around for centuries. Croissants are a perfect example of this. They're not trendy. They're not glamorous. But they're definitely unique. And who knows, maybe one day they'll make a comeback. Maybe one day you'll see croissants on the menu at every fancy restaurant in town. Or maybe they'll remain a quirky little secret, known only to a select few adventurous eaters. Either way, I think they're worth a try. If nothing else, they'll give you a good story to tell. And in the world of food, that's half the battle, isn't it? So, the next time you see croissants at the market, don't be afraid to give them a chance. You might just be surprised. You might just find your new favorite, weird vegetable. And if not, well, at least you can say you tried something new. And you got to call it a croissant. Alright, hey there, fellow forager. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're ditching the cultivated rows of your local orchard and venturing off the beaten path, underground in fact, in search of a hidden treasure, the earthnut, also known as the pignut. Picture this, you're trudging through a sun-dappled woodland, the leaves crunching softly underfoot. Maybe it's early autumn, that sweet spot where the summer's heat has mellowed but the chill of winter hasn't quite taken hold. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a perfume that, if you're anything like me, you find strangely comforting. You can practically feel the serotonin bubbling up. You're looking for subtle clues. Not the flamboyant displays of late-season wildflowers, or the obvious bounty of acorns scattered beneath an oak. No, you're scanning for something far more discreet, the delicate, fern-like foliage of Conopodium majus, the earthnut plant. It's easy to overlook, blending in with the surrounding greenery. Honestly, it looks a bit like a carrot top's awkward cousin. But trust me, the reward is worth the effort. Now, don't go tearing up the entire forest floor like a wild boar. Sustainable foraging is the name of the game, folks. Remember, we're guests here, not landlords. Start by gently feeling around the base of a plant, loosening the soil with your fingers. You're looking for a small, roundish tuber, usually about the size of a hazelnut, clinging to the roots. If you're lucky, you might find a cluster of them, like a tiny subterranean family reunion. They have a brown, almost papery skin and a firm texture. Pull it free gently, give it a little brush to remove the excess soil, and, there you have it. Your very own wild nut, plucked straight from the earth. You did it. Take a good look at it. Admire its earthiness. Before you pop that little nugget into your mouth, though, a word of caution. While generally considered safe to eat, some people can experience mild digestive upset after consuming earthnuts. Best to start with a small nibble, just to see how your system reacts. Consider it a test drive for your stomach. Nobody wants an unexpected rumble in the jungle, am I right? The taste? Well, that's where things get interesting. It's nutty, of course, but with a distinct earthy sweetness, a hint of carrot and a slightly, I don't know, intriguing aftertaste. Some say it tastes like a cross between a chestnut and a parsnip. Others detect a subtle peppery note. Honestly, the flavor is so unique, it's hard to describe. You just have to experience it for yourself. It's like trying to explain the color blue to someone who's only ever seen in black and white. Now, let's talk a little bit about the history of this humble root. Earthnuts have been a food source for humans for centuries. Mainstream historical fact, archaeological evidence suggests that they were consumed by Neolithic people in Europe, thousands of years ago. Imagine, our ancestors, clad in animal skins, foraging for the very same snacks you are today. It's a humbling thought, isn't it? And it's not just prehistoric humans who enjoyed these little tubers. During periods of famine, earthnuts were an important source of sustenance for rural communities. They were often gathered by children and the poor, providing a much-needed boost to their diets. Okay, quirky tidbit time. Did you know that in some parts of Scotland, earthnuts were traditionally used as a love charm? Young women would carry them in their pockets, believing that they would attract a suitor. Apparently, the fastest way to a man's heart is through his stomach, even if you're just carrying the potential for food. But back to the taste. While you can eat earthnuts raw, they're generally considered to be more palatable when cooked. Roasting them brings out their sweetness and mellows their earthiness. You can also boil them, steam them, or even add them to soups and stews. Think of them as the wild card ingredient that adds a touch of woodland magic to your culinary creations. Now, I know what you're thinking, okay, that's great and all, but where can I find these elusive earth nuts? Well, they're most commonly found in woodlands, hedgerows, and grasslands throughout Europe and parts of Asia. They prefer damp, shady conditions and well-drained soil. They're also really good at hiding. So keep your eyes peeled. But remember, responsible foraging is key. Only take what you need, and be mindful of the impact you're having on the environment. Leave plenty of nuts behind for the plant to propagate, and avoid disturbing the surrounding vegetation. We want to ensure that these little treasures are around for future generations to enjoy. Don't be greedy. Let's dive a little deeper into the science of the earthnut. Conopodium majus belongs to the Apiaceae family, which also includes carrots, parsley, and celery. It's a perennial plant, meaning it lives for more than 2 years. The plant produces small, white flowers in the spring, which are pollinated by insects. The earthnut itself is actually a modified stem, called a tuber, that stores energy for the plant. It's like the plant's own little survival kit. Historians still argue whether the widespread consumption of earthnuts played a significant role in shaping certain cultures or culinary traditions. Some believe that they were a staple food for certain communities, while others argue that they were merely a supplementary source of nutrition. Honestly, I wouldn't want to be in that argument. Here's a light joke for you: what do you call an earthnut that's always telling jokes? A real crack-up. I know. I'll see myself out. Now, let's talk about the nutritional benefits of earthnuts. They're a good source of carbohydrates, fiber, and minerals like potassium and magnesium. They also contain some protein and antioxidants. So, you can feel good about adding them to your diet, knowing that you're not just indulging in a delicious treat, but also nourishing your body. A fringe tidbit for your enjoyment: in some folklore traditions, earthnuts are said to have magical properties. They were believed to bring good luck, ward off evil spirits, and even enhance fertility. So, if you're feeling a little down on your luck, maybe try carrying an earthnut around with you. Hey, it couldn't hurt, right? Another point worth considering: there are several other species of wild tubers that are sometimes mistaken for earthnuts. It's important to be able to accurately identify Conopodium majus before consuming it. If you're unsure, consult a field guide or ask an experienced forager for help. Don't just go munching on anything you find in the ground. That's just asking for a bad time. Let's consider a slightly different angle. The earthnut's relatively inconspicuous nature and subterranean existence have, ironically, protected it from overexploitation. Unlike some other wild foods that have been heavily harvested, earthnuts have managed to remain relatively abundant in many areas. It's a testament to their resilience, and the power of not being noticed. The lack of commercial interest in earthnuts also contributes to their continued survival. They're difficult to cultivate on a large scale, which means that they haven't been subjected to the pressures of intensive agriculture. This allows them to thrive in their natural habitat, untouched by human interference. I told you I had 3 jokes for you. What do you call a lazy kangaroo? Pouch potato. Another fringe tidbit. In some rural communities, earthnuts were used as a natural remedy for various ailments. They were believed to have anti-inflammatory and diuretic properties. While there's limited scientific evidence to support these claims, it's interesting to note the traditional uses of this plant. Always remember that if you are feeling ill to go see a doctor before attempting to self-treat. The subtle flavor of the earthnut lends itself well to a variety of culinary applications. You can roast them and serve them as a side dish, add them to salads, or even use them as a garnish. You can also grind them into flour and use it to make bread or cakes. The possibilities are endless. Let your creativity run wild. Not too wild, though, we're still talking about earthnuts here. Historians still argue whether the decline in traditional foraging practices has led to a loss of knowledge about wild foods like earthnuts. Some believe that modern society has become too disconnected from nature, and that we've forgotten how to identify and utilize the resources that are available to us. While others see the shift away from foraging as a natural consequence of urbanization and the availability of commercially produced food. Both good points, TBH. So, there you have it, folks. A little glimpse into the world of the earthnut. I hope you enjoyed this little foraging adventure with me. So get out there, explore the woods, and see what hidden treasures you can find. Just remember to forage responsibly, and always be respectful of the environment. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover your own little patch of earthnuts, waiting to be unearthed. Happy foraging, and thanks for watching. Alright, settle in, let's get comfy. Dim the lights if you need to, because tonight, we're digging into rampion. Yeah, I know, sounds like something you'd name a particularly grumpy house cat. But trust me, it's way more interesting. It's a root vegetable, specifically the root of a bellflower, and it's got a story with a little bit of magic, a dash of intrigue, and a whole lotta, well, roots. You trudge through the garden, the cool evening air kissing your face. The scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine hangs heavy. You're on the hunt. Not for treasure, not for glory, but for something a little more, underground. You kneel, the soft soil yielding beneath your fingers, and gently loosen the earth around the base of a delicate bellflower. Its lavender blooms nod in the breeze, as if whispering secrets. With a careful tug, you unearth your prize, a rampion root, pale and slender, its skin dusted with soil. You hold it up, turning it over in your hands. It doesn't look like much, does it? Just another root. But appearances, as they say, can be deceiving. This unassuming root has a history stretching back centuries, a flavor that's both delicate and earthy, and a starring role in one of the most beloved fairy tales of all time. You carry your rampion inside, washing away the clinging soil. The water runs clear, revealing the root's creamy white flesh. You take a bite. The taste is interesting. Slightly sweet, slightly nutty, with a hint of bitterness that dances on your tongue. It's not an explosion of flavor, but rather a subtle, understated delight. It's the kind of taste that makes you want to close your eyes and savor it, to try and unravel the layers of its complexity. Rampion, or Campanula rapunculus if you want to get all botanical about it, has been cultivated since at least the 16th century. It was a popular ingredient in European cuisine, particularly in salads and soups. Imagine that. Before potatoes became all the rage, Europeans might have been chowing down on rampion fries instead. Just a thought. Now, here's a bit of a quirky tidbit. In some regions, rampion was considered an aphrodisiac. People believed it could, how do I put this delicately, enhance romantic inclinations. So, next time you're planning a date, maybe skip the oysters and go for a rampion salad instead. Just be prepared for some unexpected consequences. Just kidding. Mostly. Historians still argue whether rampion's decline in popularity was due to the rise of other root vegetables, or simply a shift in culinary tastes. But one thing is certain, rampion's legacy lives on, not just in gardens, but in the realm of fairy tales. You see, that unassuming root you hold in your hand is the very same rampion that gave birth to Rapunzel. Yes, that Rapunzel, the one with the impossibly long hair and the penchant for dramatic escapes. In the Brothers Grimm version of the story, Rapunzel's mother develops an insatiable craving for rampion growing in a neighboring witch's garden. Driven mad by her desire, she sends her husband to steal the precious root. The witch catches him in the act and demands their unborn child as payment. And thus, Rapunzel's hairy tale begins. You sit back, picturing the scene. The desperate husband, creeping into the witch's garden under the cloak of darkness. The forbidden rampion, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The ominous presence of the witch, lurking in the shadows. It's a scene ripe with tension and intrigue. I mean, can you imagine getting caught stealing vegetables? Talk about embarrassing. The fairy tale has had a significant cultural impact, and that is putting it mildly. I mean, we all know what Rapunzel looks like, right? We've seen the movies, we've read the books. That's cultural impact. It's influenced everything from fashion to architecture to, well, the length of our hair. Now, for a bit of fringe weirdness, some believe that the rampion in the story is not just a vegetable, but a symbol. A symbol of fertility. The insatiable craving, the stolen root, the exchanged child, it all points to themes of birth, motherhood, and the power of female desire. Or maybe it's just a story about a woman who really, really wanted a salad. Who knows? Maybe the brothers Grimm were just hungry when they wrote it. Historians still argue whether the Rapunzel story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed, or a celebration of female empowerment. But regardless of its interpretation, one thing is clear, rampion's association with the fairy tale has cemented its place in popular culture. It's a root vegetable that's more than just a root vegetable. It's a symbol, a metaphor, well, a really good excuse to grow your hair really, really long. You decide to prepare your rampion. You slice it thinly, the creamy white flesh yielding easily beneath the blade. You toss it with a simple vinaigrette, a drizzle of olive oil, a squeeze of lemon juice, and a sprinkle of salt and pepper. You arrange the slices on a plate, garnishing them with a few sprigs of fresh parsley. The taste is even more pronounced now, the sweetness of the rampion balanced by the acidity of the lemon and the herbaceousness of the parsley. It's a simple dish, but elegant, and surprisingly satisfying. You imagine Rapunzel, locked away in her tower, dreaming of a taste of freedom. Maybe, just maybe, a plate of rampion salad would have been enough to appease her. Now, here's a historical fact that might surprise you, in some parts of Europe, rampion leaves are also eaten. They have a slightly peppery flavor, similar to arugula or watercress. They can be added to salads, soups, or even used as a garnish. So, next time you're harvesting rampion, don't throw away the leaves. They're just as delicious as the root. But let's get back to the fairy tale element. The name, Rapunzel, itself is derived from the German word for rampion, Rapunzel. So, in a way, the story is all about the root. It's not just a plot device, it's a fundamental part of the narrative. It's the reason Rapunzel exists in the first place. It's the literal root of her problems. Here's a quirky little theory for you, maybe Rapunzel's long hair wasn't just a physical attribute. Maybe it was a metaphor for the rampion root itself, long and winding, reaching deep into the earth. Maybe the witch wasn't just keeping Rapunzel locked away, she was trying to control the source of her power. Or maybe, it's just long hair. Sometimes a braid is just a braid. Historians still argue whether the brothers Grimm invented the Rapunzel story, or simply adapted it from older folk tales. But regardless of its origins, the story has resonated with audiences for generations. It's a story about longing, about freedom, and about the enduring power of hope. And, of course, about a root vegetable. You finish your rampion salad, feeling a sense of contentment wash over you. It's a simple pleasure, but a profound one. You've connected with history, with folklore, with the earth itself. You've tasted the root of a fairy tale, and found it to be surprisingly delicious. And here's a completely random fact to leave you with, rampion is a good source of vitamin C and potassium. So, it's not just tasty, it's good for you too. Although, I'm not sure eating enough to grow your hair into a rope is advisable. You wash your plate, the water swirling down the drain. The kitchen is quiet, save for the gentle hum of the refrigerator. You glance out the window, at the dark garden, where the rampion bellflowers are sleeping. You smile, knowing that they hold a secret, a story, a taste of magic. And you, my friend, are now a part of that story. Okay, settle in, friend. Let's talk lovage. Lo vague. Just saying it makes my tongue feel fancy. It's like the name of a slightly pretentious, but ultimately lovable, character in a British rom-com. You're trudged through your local farmer's market, maybe a light drizzle is kissing your face, and you spot it, a verdant, almost arrogant-looking herb, practically daring you to take it home. You might mistake it for some overgrown parsley at first. But no, my friend, this is lovage. And it's got opinions. You pick up a bunch, maybe tentatively sniff it. Celery. Sort of. Something more. It's a celery impersonator with an identity crisis, determined to be recognized for its own unique brand of lovageness. The leaves feel substantial, a little waxy. You bring it home, already imagining the culinary possibilities. Maybe a soup. A salad. A daring cocktail. The world is your lovage-infused oyster. Now, you might be thinking, okay, great. Another weird herb I'll use once and then forget about in the back of my fridge until it turns into a sad, green ghost. But hold on. Lovage has history. Real, impressive history. We're talking Roman Empire history. The Romans, those guys who practically invented conquering and efficient plumbing, also had a thing for lovage. They spread it across Europe, using it for both culinary and medicinal purposes. Think of it as the ancient world's multivitamin, flavor enhancer, and general cure-all. Because why not? Romans were busy people, they didn't have time for separate remedies for everything. Fun fact, some historians believe that Roman soldiers chewed on lovage leaves during long marches, believing it aided digestion and reduced fatigue. It was basically the ancient world's energy bar, only considerably less processed. And probably tasted better, let's be honest. Speaking of taste, you chop up a few leaves, adding them to a simple salad. And, whoa! Celery on steroids. With a hint of parsley and a dash of something else. It's bold. It's assertive. It's the kind of flavor that slaps you in the face and then apologizes profusely. You kinda like it. Now, here's where it gets a little weird. In some cultures, lovage was believed to have magical properties. Specifically, love magic. Surprise! It was used in potions and spells to attract, well, lovers. The idea was that consuming lovage, or even just carrying it, would make you irresistible. Which, honestly, explains the name. You know, love age. Get it? Can you imagine? Ditching the dating apps and just walking around with a sprig of lovage sticking out of your pocket? Yeah, I'm single and ready to mingle. And I smell faintly of celery. Don't be intimidated. Modern dating, solved. You're welcome. But let's get back to the cooking. You decide to make a simple broth. Carrots, onions, celery, and a generous handful of lovage. As it simmers, the aroma fills your kitchen, a complex blend of familiar and unusual. It's comforting, but with an edge. You taste it. Wow! The lovage has transformed the broth, adding depth and a slightly savory note. It's like your grandma's chicken soup, but with a secret ingredient that elevates it to a whole new level. While you're stirring the broth, consider this. Historians still argue whether lovage was more prized for its culinary or medicinal uses in the ancient world. Some believe its flavor was the main draw, while others emphasize its purported health benefits. Maybe it was both. The Romans weren't exactly known for their subtlety, so it probably appealed to them to find one thing that did all the things. So, you've got this amazing broth. What next? You could use it as a base for soup, of course. Or you could get creative. Risotto? Polenta? You even consider making lovage ice cream, but decide that might be pushing it a little too far. Maybe. Okay, before you get too carried away with your newfound lovage obsession, let's talk about its darker side. Too much lovage can be a bit much. It's potent, remember? Like that friend who always has to be the center of attention. A little goes a long way. You don't want to overpower your dish, you want to enhance it. Think of lovage as the seasoning equivalent of a well-placed eyebrow raise. Subtle, but effective. Now, for a quirky tidbit, in some rural communities, lovage was once used as a natural insecticide. Apparently, its strong scent repels certain bugs. So, if you're looking for an eco-friendly way to keep those pesky aphids away from your roses, skip the chemicals and plant some lovage. Your garden will smell like a fancy celery patch, and the bugs will hate you. Win-win. You decide to use your lovage broth to make a simple potato soup. You sauté some onions and garlic, add the broth, diced potatoes, and a few sprigs of thyme. As it simmers, the flavors meld together, creating a comforting and satisfying meal. You top it with a dollop of sour cream and a sprinkle of fresh lovage. Perfection. You take a bite. The creamy potatoes, the fragrant thyme, the subtle celery-like flavor of the lovage. It's heaven in a bowl. You close your eyes and savor the moment. You feel content. But wait, there's more. Did you know that lovage roots can also be used? They have a similar flavor to the leaves, but even more intense. You can grate them into salads, add them to soups, or even pickle them. The possibilities are endless. Just remember to use them sparingly. A little lovage root goes a long way. Seriously. Let's face it, lovage is kind of the underdog of the herb world. It's not as ubiquitous as parsley or basil. It's not as trendy as cilantro or mint. But it has a unique flavor and a rich history that make it worth exploring. So, next time you're at the farmer's market, give lovage a try. You might just discover your new favorite herb. Or, at the very least, you'll have a good story to tell. Here's another fun fact. Lovage has been used in traditional medicine to treat everything from digestive problems to skin irritations. Some people believe it has diuretic properties, while others claim it can help reduce inflammation. Of course, I'm not a doctor, and this is not medical advice. But hey, it's worth a shot, right? Just don't go replacing your prescription medication with lovage tea just yet. You decide to experiment with lovage in a cocktail. You muddle a few leaves with some gin, lime juice, and simple syrup. Shake it all up with ice, strain it into a fancy glass, and garnish with a sprig of lovage. You take a sip. Whoa! The lovage adds a savory, almost umami-like note to the cocktail. It's unexpected, but delicious. You feel like a sophisticated mixologist, even though you just threw a bunch of ingredients together and hoped for the best. Remember how I said lovage was believed to have love magic properties? Well, there's a theory that its reputation as an aphrodisiac stemmed from its, let's just say, suggestive shape. The roots, in particular, were said to resemble certain anatomical features. Which, honestly, is a bit of a stretch. But hey, people have believed weirder things. Historians still argue whether lovage's flavor profile is more akin to celery or parsley. Some argue that its celery-like notes are dominant, while others emphasize its similarities to parsley. Ultimately, it's a matter of personal preference. But one thing is certain, lovage has a unique flavor that sets it apart from both celery and parsley. It's lovage, okay? Let it be lovage. You're feeling adventurous, so you decide to make lovage pesto. You blend the leaves with pine nuts, garlic, Parmesan cheese, and olive oil. The result is a vibrant green sauce with a bold, savory flavor. You toss it with some pasta, and, yum. It's like regular pesto, but with an extra kick. A gentle reminder, though, like all herbs, lovage is best used fresh. Dried lovage loses some of its flavor and aroma. So, if you want to get the most out of your lovage, use it as soon as possible. Or, freeze it for later. Because who has time to use up a whole bunch of lovage in one go? You've officially entered your lovage era. Your soups, salads, cocktails, and pestos are all infused with the unique flavor of this underappreciated herb. You feel like you've unlocked a secret level of culinary expertise. You're basically a lovage whisperer. And now, a completely random fact, the scientific name for lovage is Levisticum officinale. Officinale, in botanical Latin means, of the dispensary, referring to its historical use as a medicinal herb. It's a fancy name for a fancy herb. You try to say it out loud. Levisticum officinale. It sounds like a spell from Harry Potter. You imagine casting it, hoping to conjure up a delicious lovage-infused dish. You're standing in your kitchen, surrounded by the aroma of lovage. You feel a sense of calm, a sense of lovageness. You've discovered a new herb, a new flavor, a new passion. And you're ready to share it with the world. Or, at least, with your friends and family. Just don't be surprised if they look at you a little strangely when you start raving about the joys of lovage. It's not exactly a conversation starter. But hey, you do you. And let the world catch up. Now, go forth and lovage. Okay, settle in, friend. Let's talk weeds. Specifically, one weed that's not really a weed, at least, it used to not be a weed. Imagine you're tramping through a field, maybe after a disastrous attempt at starting a new diet fad, your resolve crumbling faster than a gluten-free cookie. The sun beats down, the air smells of, well, dirt and disappointment, mostly. You trudge past rows of crops, probably kale or something equally virtuous, and then you see it. A scraggly, unassuming plant, just hanging out, minding its own business. You probably wouldn't give it a second glance. But maybe you should. Because that unassuming little plant could be fat hen, also known as lamb's quarters, goosefoot, or Chenopodium album if you're feeling fancy. And while you might dismiss it as just another weed, it has a secret. It used to be a cultivated crop, a deliberate part of the human diet. Yeah, that's right. We chose to eat this stuff. Maybe not you, right now, with your pre-packaged snacks and your artisanal sourdough, but our ancestors. They were all about it. Feel the soft caress of the breeze as you lean closer. Brush your fingertips gently against its leaves. They're a slightly dusty, almost grayish-green, shaped vaguely like goose feet, hence one of its common names. Now, don't go chomping down on it just yet, unless you're absolutely, positively sure it's fat hen and hasn't been sprayed with anything nasty. We wouldn't want you having a weed-induced, well, anything. But if you were to, say, pick a young leaf, wash it thoroughly, and maybe sauté it with a little garlic and olive oil, well, you might be surprised. It tastes a little like spinach, a little like Swiss chard, with a slightly earthy undertone. It's actually pretty good. Or so I'm told. Hypothetically. By a botanist friend. Fat hen has been a staple in human diets for centuries. Archaeological evidence suggests that people were eating it as far back as the Neolithic period, which, for those of you who skipped history class, no judgment, is like thousands of years ago. We're talking about the dawn of agriculture. Imagine early humans just figuring out how to grow stuff, and alongside their wheat and barley, they're also cultivating fat hen. I mean, talk about being ahead of the curve. Forget the paleo diet, embrace the fat hen diet. Don't actually do that. Please. Consult a real nutritionist. The Romans were apparently quite fond of it too. Pliny the Elder, that ancient Roman know-it-all, wrote about it in his Encyclopedia Natural History, mentioning its medicinal properties. Everything was medicinal back then, wasn't it? Got a headache? Fat hen. Broken leg? Fat hen. Existential dread? You guessed it, fat hen. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a little. But the point is, it was a widely recognized and utilized plant. Historians still argue whether the ubiquity of fat hen in archaeological sites is due to deliberate cultivation or simply because it was a convenient and readily available food source. Was it actively farmed, or did people just pluck it from the wild whenever they felt peckish? The truth probably lies somewhere in between. I mean, let's be honest, if it was growing right there and it was edible, who wouldn't grab a handful? I know I would. Especially if it saved me a trip to the grocery store. The thing about fat hen is that it's incredibly adaptable. It thrives in disturbed soil, which is why you often find it in gardens, fields, and along roadsides. Basically, anywhere humans have messed things up, fat hen is there, ready to take advantage. It's like the plant equivalent of a resourceful, slightly opportunistic friend who always manages to snag the last slice of pizza. And it's nutritious. Seriously. Fat hen is packed with vitamins and minerals, including vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, and iron. It's also a good source of protein and fiber. So, while you might be cursing it as a weed, it's actually doing you a favor by providing you with a free, nutrient-rich food source. Think of it as nature's sneaky way of saying, hey, sorry about the aphids on your tomatoes, but here's some delicious greens to make up for it. Now, here's where things get a little quirky. In some cultures, fat hen has been used for other purposes. Beyond just being a food source, it's been employed in traditional medicine and even in certain rituals. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, because some of the uses are a little, shall we say, sensitive. But let's just say that fat hen has a long and fascinating history of being more than just a leafy green. It's like the Swiss Army knife of the plant world, except instead of a knife and a corkscrew, it has vitamins and, well, you get the idea. Think about it, our ancestors had a much closer relationship with the natural world than we do today. They knew which plants were safe to eat, which ones could heal, and which ones to avoid. They didn't have fancy grocery stores or nutritional labels. They relied on their knowledge of the land and the plants that grew there. And fat hen was a part of that knowledge, a readily available and reliable source of sustenance. It's only relatively recently that fat hen has been relegated to the status of a weed. As agriculture became more intensive and focused on a smaller number of crops, fat hen was gradually pushed to the margins. It became something to be eradicated, rather than cultivated. Which is kind of sad, really. I mean, here's this perfectly good plant, offering its bounty, and we're just spraying it with herbicides and pulling it out of the ground. It's like rejecting a perfectly good hug. But there's a bit of a resurgence happening. In recent years, there's been a growing interest in foraging and wild foods, and fat hen is starting to get some well-deserved attention. People are realizing that it's not just a weed, but a valuable and versatile plant that can add some serious nutrition to their diet. Plus, it's free. You can't beat free. Unless it's a free trip to the Bahamas. Or a lifetime supply of chocolate. But free fat hen is still pretty good. I mean, picture this, you're at a fancy farmer's market, surrounded by organic kale and heirloom tomatoes, and you nonchalantly pull out a bag of foraged fat hen. Everyone will be so impressed. They'll think you're some kind of wild food guru, a modern-day hunter-gatherer, in touch with the earth and all its bounty. Okay, maybe not. But you'll at least have a delicious and nutritious meal. Now, before you go rushing out to your garden to harvest all the fat hen you can find, a word of caution. Like any wild plant, it's important to identify it correctly and make sure it hasn't been exposed to any harmful chemicals. There are other plants that look similar to fat hen, and some of them might not be edible. So, do your research, consult a good field guide, or even better, go foraging with someone who knows what they're doing. And always wash your foraged greens thoroughly. You don't want to end up with a mouthful of dirt. That's just unpleasant. Did you know that the seeds of fat hen are also edible? You can grind them into flour and use them to make bread or other baked goods. Apparently, they have a slightly nutty flavor. I've never tried it myself, but I'm intrigued. Maybe I'll give it a shot sometime. Although, let's be real, my baking skills are questionable. The last time I tried to make bread, it ended up looking like a petrified rock. Historians still argue whether the decline in fat hen cultivation was solely due to the rise of other crops or if other factors, such as changes in agricultural practices or even climate change, played a role. It's a complex question with no easy answers. But one thing is clear, fat hen has a long and fascinating history, and it's a history that's worth exploring. So, next time you're out in your garden, weeding, take a closer look at that unassuming little plant. It might just be fat hen, a weed that's not really a weed, a plant that has nourished humans for millennia. And who knows, maybe you'll even be inspired to give it a try. Just remember to wash it first. And maybe add a little garlic. And, well, you know the drill. And now, my friend, it's time to say goodnight. May your dreams be filled with visions of lush, green fields, and maybe a little fat hen too. Sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite, and remember to always appreciate the little things, even the weeds. You trudge out into the garden, maybe a little reluctantly. The sun's doing that late afternoon thing where it's all golden and makes you squint, even though it's technically not that bright. You're probably thinking, ugh, gardening. Another chore. But hey, we're not tackling weeds today, or battling those suspiciously symmetrical holes some critters decided to drill in your prize-winning hostas. Nope. Today, we're going on a journey of patience. Garden patience, that is. Rumex patientia. Or, as I like to call it, the dock leaf that's trying to be fancy. Now, you're probably familiar with dock leaves. The bane of picnic goers everywhere, perpetually stationed near stinging nettles, ready to provide that slightly slimy, vaguely cooling relief after an unfortunate encounter. But garden patience? It's like dock leaf's cultured cousin. It's been invited to the garden party, while the common dock is stuck outside, peering through the window, muttering about how they were here first. You reach down, and tentatively pluck a leaf. It's broad, almost spinach-like, with a slightly lemony scent if you rub it between your fingers. And yes, you can eat it. That's the whole point. Blanch it like spinach, add it to soups, even throw it in a salad if you're feeling adventurous. Just don't go chomping on it raw unless you're a big fan of oxalic acid. Too much of that can lead to some, interesting digestive experiences. Think of it as nature's gentle cleanse. This plant isn't exactly new on the scene. The ancient Romans, those masters of conquest and plumbing, were quite fond of dock leaves, using them both as a food source and medicinally. They even took dock leaves with them on military campaigns, a vital part of their provisions. They probably weren't using them to make fancy salads, though. Imagine a legionary, helmet slightly askew, delicately arranging dock leaves and foraged berries on a tin plate. The image is, shall we say, unlikely. And speaking of medicinal uses, garden patience has a history as long as your arm. Traditionally, it was used as a laxative, which, considering its oxalic acid content, probably worked a little too well, and also as a treatment for skin conditions. Some even believed it could cure scurvy, although that was more likely due to the plant's vitamin C content than any magical properties. It's all a bit more complicated than that. But here's a quirky tidbit for you. In some cultures, dock leaves were also used as a form of natural dye. The roots, in particular, could yield a yellow or brown pigment, which was then used to color wool and other fabrics. Now, you're probably thinking, I'm never going to dye wool with dock roots. But hey, knowledge is power. And you never know when you might find yourself in a post-apocalyptic situation, desperately trying to add some color to your drab rags. Now, let's get a bit more technical. Garden patience is relatively easy to grow. It prefers a sunny spot and well-drained soil, but it's generally pretty forgiving. It's a perennial, so it'll come back year after year, which is great if you're a fan. Just be warned, it can get a bit enthusiastic. It likes to spread. Think of it as that overly friendly guest at a party who just doesn't understand the concept of personal space. You might need to keep it in check, lest it take over your entire garden. And that's where things can get tricky. Because while garden patience is generally considered safe to eat in moderation, it does contain oxalic acid. As we mentioned, this isn't a huge issue if you blanch the leaves first, which reduces the oxalic acid content. But if you have kidney problems, or are prone to kidney stones, you might want to steer clear. Or at least, consult your doctor first. We're not giving medical advice here, just a gentle nudge towards caution. Historians still argue whether garden patience was a staple food or more of a supplementary ingredient. Some believe it was a widespread source of nutrition, particularly for poorer communities. Others argue that it was more of a niche food, used primarily for its medicinal properties or as a survival food in times of famine. The truth, as it often does, probably lies somewhere in between. What is known is that it was far more appreciated than it is today. It is important to consider that plant names and classifications aren't set in stone. What one person calls garden patience, another might call something else entirely. And even within the species Rumex patientia, there can be considerable variation. Some varieties are more palatable than others, some are more resistant to disease, and some are just plain uglier. It's like a botanical family reunion, you're bound to find a few oddballs in the mix. Now, let's talk about the modern resurgence of garden patience. You might not find it in your local supermarket, but it's gaining popularity among chefs and foodies looking for unique and interesting ingredients. It is a very versatile plant. Chefs are rediscovering its lemony flavor and experimenting with it in all sorts of dishes, from soups and salads to sauces and even desserts. Because why not? Garden patience, though quite obscure today, had a brush with fame back in the Middle Ages. It was often cultivated in monastery gardens. Monks, those silent guardians of knowledge, were known for their expertise in horticulture and herbal medicine. They meticulously cultivated garden patience, using it for both culinary and medicinal purposes. Perhaps they enjoyed its slightly tart flavor, or maybe they just appreciated its resilience. Either way, it's safe to say that garden patience owes a debt of gratitude to the monastic orders of Europe. Here's another fun fact. The seeds of garden patience can also be eaten. They can be ground into flour and used to make bread or porridge. However, they're quite small and fiddly to harvest, so you'd need a lot of patience to collect enough for a decent meal. Which, come to think of it, is rather fitting, isn't it? However, there's been some debate among gardeners and herbalists about the potential for confusion between garden patience and other dock species. Some people have accidentally harvested and consumed the wrong type of dock leaf, leading to unpleasant side effects. So, if you're not sure what you're doing, it's always best to err on the side of caution. You should always positively identify any plant before you eat it. It's also worth noting that garden patience can sometimes hybridize with other dock species, creating plants that are difficult to identify. So, if you're growing it in your garden, it's a good idea to keep an eye on it and make sure it's not cross-pollinating with any unwanted relatives. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the patience part of the name. Why is it called garden patience? Well, some say it's because it takes a bit of patience to grow it properly. Others say it's because you need patience to harvest the leaves without getting stung by nettles, which, let's be honest, is a constant threat in any garden. Still, this is probably not the main reason for the name. And there's a joke in all of this somewhere. I can't quite put my finger on it. It's probably something about the inherent irony of needing patience to grow a plant called patience. Or maybe it's about how gardening in general requires an almost superhuman level of patience. Who knows? It's also worth noting that, like many leafy greens, garden patience is a nutritional powerhouse. It's packed with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. It's a good source of vitamin A, vitamin C, iron, and potassium. It's basically nature's multivitamin. Not to mention, it is a good source of fiber, which is essential for digestive health. I bet you weren't expecting a lecture on digestive health when you started this adventure, but here we are. And let's not forget that one of the most prominent uses of dock leaves in the real world is as a cure for stinging nettle stings. What could be more appropriate? There is always one or two around in any semi-wild place. The sting of the stinging nettle is no joke, and the pain is more than just a simple scratch. It is more like a chemical reaction that the dock leaf can neutralize when rubbed on the afflicted area. So, there you have it. Garden patience, the dock leaf that's actually trying. It's a versatile, nutritious, and historically significant plant. It might not be the most glamorous vegetable in the world, but it's definitely worth a second look. And hey, if nothing else, it'll give you something to talk about at your next dinner party. You can casually drop into conversation, "Oh, this salad? It's got a touch of garden patience. You know, rumex patientia. The Romans used to eat it. Watch the conversation unfold. Wind down. The sun continues its gentle descent, casting long shadows across the garden. The air grows cooler, softer, and the sounds of the day begin to fade away, replaced by the quiet rustling of leaves and the distant hum of insects. The leaves of the garden patience rustle softly in the gentle breeze, their subtle lemony scent filling the air. You reflect on the plant's unique history, its medicinal uses, and its potential as a culinary ingredient. There is a sense of calm that settles over you. The world outside is still there, but it feels further away. In this moment, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the garden, you feel a sense of peace. You are here now, and there is nothing else that matters. Breathe slowly, and let the worries of the day drift away on the breeze. The earth beneath you is firm and supportive, the sky above is vast and endless. The darkness will come soon, and the earth will rest. Sweet dreams.